protocol has been shared, but I must recognize the president of the organization under whose auspices this conference is taking place, the General Secretary, all others at the head table, the leader of the private sector in Barbados, and other members of the organization, Comrade Messiah, if you allow me to call you Comrade. If you don't, I can withdraw and say Miss. Delegates all, good morning to all of you. It is an honor to be here with you today. I said to the General Secretary, you always plan these things on Thursdays. Maybe you think that because you plan it on Cabinet Day, I wouldn't be able to attend. But such is the respect that we have for CTUSAB, that even on Cabinet Day, the minister responsible for labor, as well as the Prime Minister, recognize that Cabinet, at least for a few minutes, will have to take a back seat. That is a sign of the respect. It is not token, but the respect that we have for the organization and the respect we pay to the organization. I'd also like to join the General Secretary. I feel as though I said that twice. I'm beginning to get a bit concerned that I'm joining General Secretary de Pisa so often. But we must pay tribute to the distinguished gentleman on the screen and the work that he has done for the trade union movement, for education, but through those for the country. What some persons may not be aware of is that as I worked with others to develop the national minimum wage in 2021, that the Most Honorable Patrick Frost was one of those distinguished persons who came together to help us as we moved in uncharted territory at a very uncertain time in the world's history. This was kind of not in the middle, but almost in the middle of the pandemic period. And Mr. Frost, the Most Honorable Patrick Frost, was one of those persons who we turned to. We had a number of meetings, I remember, in Haggett Hall, and he lent his experience, his leadership, and helped us as we moved to establish for the first time in Barbados a national minimum wage. Now, the theme that you've chosen is a shared vision for a stronger tomorrow through change and increased dialogue. When I hear people asking or suggesting that there is need for change, I often ask if it is a real request. Because we often say that the only constant is change. But I think most of us know that most of us don't really like change, because we become accustomed to, even in situations that may not be positive, we become accustomed to where we are. And there is very often fear with respect to what happens when there is change. I believe, though, that based on the theme that you've chosen, you've used words like vision, which suggests that we are looking forward. And I get from this a recognition that we understand that the world around us is changing at a frenetic pace. We used to say that change is happening quickly. But I think in the last few years, maybe pre-pandemic, but certainly during and after the pandemic, change in all areas, not just environmental with respect to the climate crisis, technological, and that continues. We don't know from one day to the next, or from one day to the other, where technology is going to take us. This morning, an announcement that AI will be able to diagnose diseases, not diagnose, predict diseases years in advance once you have all the information. And medical people or scientists will be able to address before things happen. But we don't know where it is going to take us. So, and these are rapid changes. We complain about the heat. And in Portugal, in Europe, 45 degrees Celsius in the summer. Temperatures that Barbados have, we don't get even remotely close to. In the geopolitical sphere, significant change. Well, we know, particularly from the political perspective, that from one day to another, sometimes from 1 hour to another, we're not sure what the large, powerful countries, what their positions are. And so the change that is taking place all around us means that as we vision, we have to vision recognizing that we have to change our approaches, we have to change our strategies, and we have to calibrate how to do that while maintaining our principles. So the principles don't change, but a lot of other things have to change. And change and increased dialogue is what we are speaking to, I believe, when I see your theme. Government is committed to change because we recognize what is happening all around us. All that I've shared with you are the things that we as a government, a cabinet, and a wider government, government to include both policy level, policy/political level, but also at the senior public service level. We see the changes happening all around us. We hear from colleagues far and near about some of their experiences. And so we, like CTUSAB, like all of you gathered here today, we want to make sure that we have a future. And we too are visioning for the future, recognizing that that future is itself changing. And there are certain changes that we have to make in order to make sure that the future does not leave us behind, or that the future does not cause us any damage, any harm. And so issues like reform in our justice system, reform in our, and I don't have to speak necessarily to that. I think you're aware of some of those changes from time to time in our justice system. Reform also in labor administration. I announced I think a couple of weeks ago, that we are making certain adjustments, strengthening the Labor Department. We believe that maybe for the first time we can separate conciliation and conciliation from the enforcement arm, which is something that is best practice, something that we've not been able to do to this point because of the resource limitations that many small island developing states face. Those are real resource constraints, but we believe that we are at that point where we can effect a necessary change in that direction. We've also, with respect to labor justice, established for the first time a full-time chair of the tribunal with part-time panels as a first step to strengthening that labor justice process, to make sure that there is fairness, that there is access to justice by those who are aggrieved or who feel themselves to be aggrieved. We have established, like I said earlier, the national minimum wage, which the Most Honorable Patrick Frost was a part of, and this year we increase that. That is part of the adjustment change that good visioning demands, not just requires, but demands. And we have had also to make adjustments. This is now going back almost 2 full years to the Social Security system. And I always say that I am reminded to say that our system was not privatized, it was corporatized in terms of the structure of the actual organization. But there was a significant element of revitalization measures that had to be taken because change is happening. Our population is declining, not projected to decline. Our population is declining. Our population is also aging. And so the need for change is real. And the government has had to respond, including in revitalization measures, to make sure that our social security system remains both relevant and capable of delivering on the promise that it makes to all of us that there will be something when there is something for us when there is disruption, either disruption due to illness, due to maternity, now due to paternity, due to retirement. We have to change because everything that is happening around us requires and demands that we change. And we also agree that improved dialogue is essential. Just last night, I was able to sit and listen in a setting we refer to as Ideas Forum, sit and listen to some excellent ideas being shared about how we can develop our country, how we can create a better environment for all of us to be able to enjoy. That is dialogue, that is engagement. We've had much dialogue and engagement on a number of areas. I'm not going to go through the list, but I'll just say that the government is happy with the involvement of the Congress of Trade Unions and Staff Associations in those engagements, most recent being in crafting and drafting what will become Protocol 7. We know that CTUSAB was also very heavily involved in the crafting of the missions, and those missions give us the guiding framework as to how we develop our country. I sometimes tease, but I'm always serious when I speak to the General Secretary of CTUSAB about the significant input that CTUSAB, through his representation, made in all of the meetings. And I know that because I chaired all of the consultation meetings as we put together the Declaration of Mission Barbados. And CTUSAB was integral in crafting the 6 missions that we have to guide our country. We've had public consultations, engagement, social dialogue on matters of education reform, a whole number of things. And most recently, government has shared with the social partnership the recognition that dialogue as it relates to moving the country forward, not just keeping it stable, but moving it forward in such an uncertain and unpredictable global economic, social, political, cultural environment requires that we have even more people at the table. And so the proposal to include members of the Social Justice Committee with the traditional tripartite social partners as we discuss these major matters is something that we believe is necessary, important, particularly at this juncture. And so that causes us to really embrace the theme, the matter of a shared vision for a stronger tomorrow. We're not resting, CTUSAB is not resting, your organizations are not resting on your laurels. You want to improve, you want to be stronger tomorrow, because the entire country wants to be stronger tomorrow. We agree that it can be done, has to be done, must be done through change, as we change approaches, change structures while maintaining our fundamental beliefs, principles, credibility. And it can be done, must be done through increased dialogue. I wish, on behalf of the Prime Minister, the Cabinet, the broader government, that you have a very, very productive conference, that you're able, under your theme, to really vision what your organization, but beyond your organization, what the trade union movement and what the country can do, can become, can achieve, as we build together, as we vision together, as we dialogue together, as we look forward to that stronger Barbados. Thank you very much, and God bless you.